Hey, this is choreographer Wade Robson, and welcome to my Thriller Cast. I'm originally from Brisbane, Australia. Well, the first thing I heard was just the song Thriller because I saw the making of Thriller, the music video. And it was my older brother's video, and I don't know, at some point, I saw it for the first time when I was 2, and just flipped on it. And I used to run into the kitchen every time the werewolf part came on because I was too scared, but then run back when he would start dancing. And that was my first connection to it, and I just, I would ask my mom, I wanted to watch it all day, every day, and by the time I could actually walk and move 3 or 4, I had learned pretty much all of the choreography. So yeah, that was my first experience with that, and which became my first experience with dance and everything. Seeing Thriller was my first connection to dance, my first sight of it really, and that's exactly what started my love for it. And that's what I started out doing with dance, was impersonating Michael Jackson. So I learned all of Thriller, and that was all I did every day, was just, and then going on from there and watching all of his other videos and learning all the movements, and that became my love out of that. I didn't start in, dance classes or anything like that. Michael was my first sight of dance. So by the time I was 5, I had become sort of a professional Michael Jackson impersonator in Brisbane, Australia. That was my complete entrance into dance. Talking about it in retrospect, he's such a well-educated dancer. He knows so much about dance and studied so much. And when you look back at Thriller now, that's what you can see is all of these influences from all over the place, but then at the same time he had something that was so definably him. I mean, nobody danced like that at that point. Nobody does now, except if they're trying to look like him. But it was just, I don't know, it was so fresh and so new that even thinking about the music of the Thriller album, when you listen to most albums from the 80s, they're so definably 80s. And they have that particular sound to it that as soon as you hear it, you know right away, oh, that's 80s music. With Thriller, it didn't have that thing. Everything was approached from such a fresh angle. And that's why it was so attractive and why it's been so timeless. I knew you were going to ask me what my favorite cut on the album was, and it's just the hardest question. Want to be starting something? I think Michael, being such a strong dancer, as a musician, obviously drove his music, and he just understood rhythmically how to build these songs that just, as a dancer, they just get so deep inside of you rhythmically, and they're just approached from such a different angle. It's a hard thing to explain. Some of that inspiration for him probably comes from James Brown and that sort of thing, but the way the drums rock are just, the pocket is so tight on them, and as soon as you hear it as a dancer, you just can't help but move. So Wanna Be Starting Something is one for that. PYT is another one. PYT would be something that you would maybe musically connect. It has more of a funk background. It connects to maybe some more of the music that was going on at that time. It's just so naturally funky, and he was mixing so many realms. He had the R&B, he had the pop, and he had the rock elements. He always loved the strong driving guitars. That really, there's this aggressiveness in the music that just makes you move. As far as music videos go, nobody had ever done anything like these music videos, which were short films. First, the concepts behind them, and then everything was just executed so well, with all the best people hired in every field. When you think about Thriller, having John Landis, a true, film director, Rick Baker, who did the makeup, who did the makeup for John Landis's previous film, American Werewolf in London. I mean, these are just people who are at the top of their craft. They're filmmakers, storytellers. Everything with Thriller and the way it was done was just so authentic and so original, every aspect of it. And nobody was doing anything like that at that time. I mean, as far as even breaking the barriers of black music. He came in and just said, listen, I'm not making black music, I'm not making white music, I'm just making my music. It was exactly that. It crossed all of those barriers, and MTV was mostly just playing rock videos at that point, and everybody just lost their minds over it, understandably. And you watch it now, and it could come out today and do the same thing as it did back then. It stands that test of time. As I said about the music not being so definable to a particular time, not being dated, it was the same with the choreography. Same with dance. You see so many dance moves that are connected, exactly to the 80s. And as soon as you see it, oh, that was a trendy thing in the 80s. Nothing in the choreography was trendy. And I think that was the approach. They weren't trying to fit in with what anybody else was doing, what kids were doing in the discos or anything like that. The choreography was approached from a storyteller's point of view, and that was the intention. It wasn't trying to be hip and trendy. It was just completely new. And you still can't really define what style of dance it is, because it's just this collection of all, obviously, Michael Peters' inspirations and Michael's. It was just so fresh. As I said, I was born in Brisbane, Australia, and I was there until I was 8. But when I was 5 years old, Michael was touring the world. It was the Bad Tour in '87. And his company was holding these dance competitions for people to impersonate him in different countries that he went to. So they were holding one in Brisbane, Australia. And all my mother's friends, at that point I was already, dancing like Michael and that sort of thing. And my mom didn't really take it seriously at that point. It was just something fun and cute that I did. But all of her friends were telling her, you should call the people who are putting this competition together and get weighed in on it. So she did, and they ended up saying, well, listen, he can do it. He can perform in it, but he can't compete, because it was 8 years old and up or something like that, and I was 5. So they said, well, let him be a special guest. So I had the bad outfit with the buckles and the stripes and the whole deal. We had it custom made. And I went in and performed in this competition, and they ended up changing the rules during the competition, and I won it. And then I went on the finals and won that, and the prize was to meet Michael. So he was performing in Brisbane, and we went to go see the show with my family. And then afterwards there was a meet and greet, so I got to meet Michael again. I was in the full bad outfit, and he was just sort of tripping out on my outfit and asked me if I danced. And I said, yeah. And he said, do you want to perform with me tomorrow night in the show? And I said, okay. And so that was the next thing. The next night he was doing another show, and it was at the end of the show. The last song was Bad, and it was him and Stevie Wonder on stage. And a big bodyguard came and picked me up out of the audience and took me backstage. And he was going to have orphans on stage already in this last part, so that's why he kind of figured he could throw another kid on there. The thing that was sort of funny about it, they were sort of this dramatic theatrical version of orphans. They were in dressed in all rags and that sort of thing, and then there I was on the end in the full bad suit. So we're all brought on stage for this last song, and Michael comes up to me and sort of gives me this face and kind of does some little move, and I take it as get into it more. So I walk all the way down stage and throw my hat off into the audience and start going. But really he meant, let's go. It's over. So two guys come on and take Stevie Wonder off stage. They take all the other kids off stage. Michael's just in the back of the stage dying laughing because I have no clue, and I'm just downstage going for it, solo time. And he's dying laughing, and he ends up leaving. And the show's over, and the band is just jamming, and it's just me and the band. And finally I turn around and realize that everybody's gone, and freak out and run off. But that was my first time on stage. It was 50,000 people. And then we ended up he wanted to talk to me and my mom again the next day, so we ended up coming back to his hotel and hanging out with him for a little bit, my mom and I, and that was kind of the first time we'd ever talked. Yeah, and that was it. So that was my first kind of entrance into the business, and I went and joined a dance company the next day. And then we moved to America with my mother and sister when I was 9, and we ended up meeting Michael again somehow, and became friends. And he stayed a mentor and friend of mine since then.